Bedtime stories for kids. Cinderella. Once upon a time, in a small kingdom nestled between green hills and silver rivers, there lived a kind and gentle girl named Ella. She was the only child of a respected nobleman, a quiet man who loved his daughter more than anything in the world. Her mother had passed away when Ella was very young, but before she closed her eyes for the last time, she took Ella's hands in her own and whispered, "Be kind, my darling. No matter what life gives you, let your heart stay gentle. That will be your true magic." Ella never forgot those words. For years, she and her father lived peacefully. They read stories by the fire, tended the rose garden together, and shared laughter that echoed through the halls of their home. But time, as it always does, moved on. Her father, believing Ella needed a mother's guidance, eventually remarried. The woman he chose was elegant and poised, Lady Tremaine. But behind her graceful smile lay a cold and calculating heart. She brought with her two daughters, Drizella, tall and sour-faced, and Anastasia, always pouting and spoiled. At first, Ella tried her best to befriend them. "We'll be like sisters," she said brightly, offering Anastasia a ribbon from her own collection. But the stepsisters only laughed. "Why would I wear something so plain?" Anastasia sneered. "She thinks she's one of us," Drizella added, rolling her eyes. And Lady Tremaine, well, she simply watched and said nothing, her painted lips curling ever so slightly in amusement. When Ella's father passed away unexpectedly during a winter journey, everything changed. The house grew cold, the laughter vanished, and Lady Tremaine revealed her true face. "You will earn your keep now, girl," she said sharply one morning. "You live under my roof. It's only fair you work for your place in it." From then on, Ella became more servant than daughter. She scrubbed floors, polished silverware, cooked meals she wasn't allowed to eat, and slept in the attic beside the mice. Because she spent so much time near the hearth, her cheeks were often smudged with ash. Drizella began calling her Cinderella. Cinderella. Anastasia laughed. How fitting for a girl who belongs in the soot. Ella didn't cry, not in front of them. She remembered her mother's words. She whispered them to herself at night like a lullaby. "Be kind, stay gentle." Even as her hands blistered and her spirit tired, Ella never lost her kindness. She befriended the birds and mice in the attic, speaking to them as though they were family. "You're the only ones who see me," she would whisper to them, brushing a mouse's tiny ear with her finger. And in return, they stayed with her. They danced when she sang. They brought her scraps of ribbon and thread. They reminded her that even in the darkest corners of life, there was still love. Spring arrived in the kingdom, and with it came a great stir of excitement. Word spread like wildfire. The king was hosting a grand royal ball in honor of the prince's return. It was not just any ball. It was an event where every eligible young lady in the land was invited. The prince, handsome and noble, was seeking a bride, and his father was determined to help him find one. One morning, as Cinderella knelt on the floor, scrubbing the marble tiles, a sharp knock came at the door. She opened it to find a royal courier, standing proudly, a scroll in hand. By order of His Majesty, the courier announced, "All noble families with unmarried daughters are summoned to the royal palace for a grand ball." Lady Tremaine's eyes lit up. Drizella and Anastasia squealed with delight. The prince, Drizella shrieked, "He'll fall in love with me, for sure," Anastasia declared, twirling clumsily. Cinderella stood in the doorway, her heart fluttering. "May I go too?" she asked quietly. The room went still. Lady Tremaine turned to her, her smile thin. "You go to a royal ball. And wear what?" "The curtains." Drizella burst into laughter. "You'd scare the horses away." Cinderella's cheeks burned, but she stood tall. "Father was a nobleman. I'm of age. I have every right." Lady Tremaine's smile widened. "Of course, my dear, if you finish all your chores, and if you can find something suitable to wear, you may go." Hope flickered in Cinderella's chest. "Thank you, stepmother," she said, bowing her head. But she didn't see the way Lady Tremaine's eyes narrowed, or the knowing glance she exchanged with her daughters. That week was a storm of chaos. Cinderella was given double her usual work, scrubbing every floorboard, pressing every dress, polishing boots until her hands ached. At night, she climbed into the attic and pulled out her mother's old gown. A simple yet lovely dress with soft blue fabric and lace at the collar. With the help of her mice and bird friends, she began to repair it. "We'll make it lovely," she whispered. "Just enough to get me there." They patched the tears, added ribbons and beads scavenged from the sisters' cast-offs, and fluffed the sleeves. By the day of the ball, the dress looked beautiful in its own modest way. As the carriage waited outside for Lady Tremaine and the girls, Cinderella came down the stairs, glowing. "I'm ready," she said, her voice trembling with hope. Drizella and Anastasia stared, stunned. "That's my sash," Anastasia shrieked. "And those are my pearls," Drizella added. Before Cinderella could speak, they lunged, they tore the ribbons, yanked the beads, ripped the fabric until the gown hung in tatters. Cinderella fell to her knees, gasping. Lady Tremaine said nothing. She merely walked past her, stepping into the carriage with a satisfied smirk. The door slammed shut, the carriage pulled away. Cinderella was left alone in the courtyard, holding the shreds of her dress, her heart broken. She fled to the garden, her sobs echoing into the still night. "Why," she wept, "why is kindness never enough?" The moon hung overhead, silent. Then, a light shimmered. The air sparkled like morning dew, and a voice, warm and calm, filled the air. "Kindness, my dear, is always enough. But even kindness needs a little magic sometimes." Cinderella turned. A woman stood before her, cloaked in silver, her eyes bright with wisdom and love. "Who are you?" Cinderella asked, wiping her tears. "Why, I'm your fairy godmother," the woman replied with a wink. "And we have a ball to get to." Cinderella stared at the woman before her, hardly daring to believe what she'd heard. "My fairy godmother," she whispered. "Yes, yes, dear," the woman smiled, lifting her wand with a graceful twirl. "Now, stop those tears. We haven't much time." With a flick of her wrist, the fairy godmother pointed to the pumpkin in the corner of the garden. It shimmered with golden light and grew, stretching, groaning, until it transformed into a splendid golden carriage, with ivory wheels and crystal lanterns. Cinderella gasped. "It's beautiful, only the best for you, my dear," the fairy godmother chuckled. Next, she turned to the mice scurrying nearby. "Let's find something fitting for our footman, shall we?" In a flash of light, the mice transformed into handsome coachmen in blue and gold livery. The lizards from the garden became guards, their green eyes now sharp and alert. Then the fairy godmother looked at Cinderella, her smile gentle. "Now, let's see about that dress." Cinderella stood still as silver mist rose around her. Her rags lifted into the air, twisting and twirling like silk caught in the breeze. The fabric changed before her eyes, into a gown of soft silver and pale blue, sparkling like moonlight on water. The bodice shimmered with tiny crystals, and a delicate veil floated from her shoulders. Finally, a pair of glass slippers appeared on her feet, fragile, perfect, and unlike anything she'd ever seen. Cinderella turned slowly, tears in her eyes. "I feel like I'm dreaming." "This is your moment," said the fairy godmother. "But remember, magic has rules. When the clock strikes midnight, everything will return to what it was." Cinderella nodded. "Midnight, I understand. Go now," the fairy godmother said, opening the carriage door. "And dance, my dear. Dance with joy." The horses neighed, the lanterns glowed, and Cinderella stepped into the carriage with her heart full of wonder. As it pulled away toward the castle, she looked back once and saw her fairy godmother smiling in the moonlight. "Thank you," she whispered. At the royal palace, the ball was already in full swing. Ladies in silk gowns laughed and fanned themselves. Musicians played under chandeliers, made of crystal. The prince, tall, dark-haired, with kind eyes, stood at the edge of the ballroom, politely dancing with guests but looking distant. "They're all lovely," he said quietly to his father, "but none of them feel right." Then the trumpets sounded. All heads turned. Cinderella entered the ballroom. She glowed. Her gown shimmered with every step. The guests parted for her as though she were royalty. The prince's breath caught. He stepped forward, mesmerized. "Who is she?" he asked. "A foreign princess, perhaps." Someone whispered. "She's like a dream," said another. But Cinderella said nothing. She only smiled a soft, shy smile as the prince approached. "May I have this dance?" he asked, holding out his hand. Cinderella curtsied, heart fluttering. "Yes, I'd be honored." And they danced. They danced across the marble floor, through waltzes and sonatas, through laughter and candlelight. The prince didn't take his eyes off her once. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Does it matter?" She replied, her voice like bells. "Just for tonight, let it be a mystery." He smiled, enchanted. "Then let me cherish this mystery." Outside, the stars turned. Inside, time melted. Cinderella felt more alive than ever. Not because she was seen, but because she was free. But then, the clock began to chime. Dong, dong. Her eyes widened. Midnight, she gasped. "What's wrong?" the prince asked, reaching for her hand. I have to go." She ran, past guests, past startled guards, through golden halls. "Wait," the prince called. "Please, I don't even know your name." She didn't stop. As she fled down the palace steps, one glass slipper slipped from her foot. She paused for only a heartbeat, then turned and ran into the night. The carriage was gone. The gown vanished in a shimmer of silver light. She stood once again in her patched dress, barefoot in the cold, her hair falling in loose curls. But she smiled. "It was real," she whispered. For one night, it was real. And far behind her, the prince knelt by the slipper, holding it like a sacred thing. "I will find her," he vowed. "No matter how far, no matter how long." The very next morning, the entire kingdom buzzed with excitement and confusion. Who was the mysterious girl at the ball? Where had she come from? And why had she disappeared just before midnight? The prince had only one clue: a single glass slipper, delicate and perfect, which he now held as if it were made of stars. "She may not have given me her name," he told the king, "but I'll know her by the way she walks, the way she speaks. No other foot in this kingdom will fit this slipper, because it belongs to her, and only her." And so, a royal decree was made. Every unmarried young woman in the kingdom was to try on the glass slipper. When the right one was found, she would become the prince's bride. The search began. From grand estates to humble homes, the royal escort arrived with velvet cushion and crystal slipper. But one by one, every girl failed. Some tried to force it. Others wept when it didn't fit. And still, the prince searched. At Lady Tremaine's home, chaos erupted. "The prince is coming here," Drizella screeched. "Get me my best dress." "Where's my hairpiece?" Anastasia wailed. "And my perfume." Cinderella swept quietly past the kitchen, arms full of linens. "May I try the slipper as well?" she asked softly. The room froze. Lady Tremaine turned slowly, her voice like ice. "You, don't be absurd. She's just a servant," said Drizella. "Not even a proper lady," Anastasia added. But outside, the royal carriage was already pulling into the courtyard. Lady Tremaine narrowed her eyes. "Stay in your room," she hissed, "and keep quiet, or you'll regret it." She locked the attic door behind her. Cinderella sat on her bed, heart pounding, eyes brimming with quiet strength. "No more hiding," she whispered, "no more fear." Downstairs, the royal footman entered the drawing room. By royal decree, each eligible young woman must try the slipper. Drizella pushed forward. "Me first." She shoved her foot into the slipper. It didn't fit, not even close. "Your turn, dear sister," she said through gritted teeth. Anastasia tried. Her heel stuck halfway, her toes crammed painfully. "It's just a little tight." The footman sighed. The slipper must fit perfectly. Then a voice came from above. "May I have a turn?" Everyone looked up. Cinderella stood at the top of the stairs, dressed in a simple, clean gown, her face calm but radiant. Lady Tremaine stepped forward. "She's no one, just a maid." "All the same," the footman replied, My orders are clear. Cinderella descended slowly. The birds outside chirped softly as if holding their breath. She sat. The footman knelt and gently placed the slipper on her foot. It fit perfectly. Gasps echoed through the room. Lady Tremaine's face drained of color. Drizella dropped her fan. You were the girl at the ball, the footman whispered. Cinderella nodded, smiling. I didn't mean to hide, she said. I only wanted to dance. Just once, just for me. The doors opened, and the prince stepped in. Their eyes met. No words were needed. He crossed the room and knelt before her, taking both her hands in his. I knew I'd find you, he said, even if the whole world stood in the way. Cinderella's voice was barely more than a breath. I hoped you would. The prince stood and offered his arm. Come with me, not as a mystery, but as yourself. Kind, brave, and true. She took his hand, and together they walked out into the sunlight. The wedding was celebrated throughout the kingdom with music, dancing, and cheers that echoed over the hills. The mice had front row seats in little velvet chairs. Lady Tremaine and her daughters were invited out of mercy, not affection, and seated far from the dais. As for Cinderella, she wore a gown of soft gold and white, a crown of flowers in her hair, and a heart full of joy. She did not become a princess because of a slipper. She became a princess because of her grace, her goodness, and the light she never let the world take from her. And as the kingdom watched her step onto the balcony beside the prince, they cheered for more than beauty. They cheered for hope. They cheered for the girl who never stopped believing, even in the ashes.